Hello there, Middle-earth strategy battle game fanatics. Welcome back. It has been a long time since I have done one of these, so I am happy to return to this source material and start doing army reviews. And I'm doing one today, as you can tell from the title and from the clip, that is gonna be kind of long. So this army actually ended up getting split into, you know, two separate armies, so to speak. I want to say 2 years ago now. It's been, and that second one being Dunland, being separated away from Isengard. So all the Dunland models are still legitimate models that can be taken in Isengard, but they do have their own army now, and Dunland has their own legendary legion. So as such, I'm going to focus strictly on the Isengard models, and we're going to leave Dunland for another day. So I'm sorry, folks who are looking to hear about, Goroth and the Dunland Chieftain and Huskarls and stuff like that, but we are going to be discussing them in a completely separate video and doing, their own army workup for them. So this is going to be a multi-part video series covering Isengard because there's a lot of models and profiles for Isengard. I think the heroes alone are probably going to take 2 videos, and the troops, well, even with cutting out Dunland, could potentially take 2 as well, because there's a lot of troop options, especially when you start looking at the fact that they include 2 siege weapons. So I may do the siege weapons as their own separate video. So let's go ahead and just jump right into Isengard. And where better to start than with the big baddie himself, that being Saruman. So Saruman is a wizard with the Isengard infantry and hero keywords, and he is a hero of legend. So Saruman brings a lot to the table. He's not really a combat hero. He does have a good fight value at 5 and a good strength at 4, but that's pretty standard for most heroes. He is low on defense with a 5 defense, and again, he's only got 1 attack, but 3 wounds to go with his 3 fate makes it so that he's not going anywhere, and if for whatever reason he ever needs to charge anything, he does have 7 courage, so he's really not going to fail courage checks against terror or anything like that. Not only that, but he has terrifying aura for one of his spells, so he can make himself terrifying. So a typical wizard with a 3/6/3 might will fate with the asterisk because he has a staff of power, so he'll be using a free point of will per turn. And then his only heroic action is heroic channeling. He can be upgraded with a horse, which is really useful for him because that gives you a lot of that kiting ability that you can do. Move 5 inches out, throw a spell at somebody that you can now see, or line yourself up to, what's his most, common spell is Sorcerer's Blast. Blast somebody and then run back 5 inches behind your line for some decent protection. So his special rules, he's got 3 of them. The Palantiri, which we know already, allows him to get free priority once a game. There's no rolling, you just automatically take it. So, and it has to be declared before priority is rolled. So that's really nice because the ability to basically force your opponent to burn some might could really help you when it comes to resources, because you could force your opponent to burn resources that they would normally and naturally not want to burn in a situation where you're going for a dice roll to see who could potentially win the priority phase. And then, of course, what comes with that, all the bonuses, of course, that come with having priority, that being you have to force your opponent has to call heroic actions first, and you get to dictate combats. So really useful. He then has his, and I'm going to butcher this, so y'all don't slaughter me in the comments or give me a phonetic spelling to help me out, but Voice Okudiyar, current, yeah, you got it. His secondary name that he goes by. I think is that his Elvish name or his, I don't remember. Anyway, no, it's not his Elvish. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, it gives him a 12-inch stand fast, and it affects hero models as well as warriors. So that's really good. So even though Isengard, being mostly Uruk-Hai, has high courage value, higher than men at least, the ability to give automatic passes to heroes can actually extend the standfast range. Because if you get a hero on the outside of the 12-inch range, and they've now passed their courage test, so they extend their own standfast by 6 inches. So pretty good there. Nice little combo. Then the last thing he has is the Lord of the Ishtiri, and that is he can choose to reroll 1 dice when making casting or resisting rolls, and that's really great, especially if you're trying to cast something like, you got yourself set up for a great Sorcerer's Blast. You're going to maybe potentially throw 2 enemy heroes that are mounted against each other and dismount them and knock them prone and maybe do some damage. So you throw it and you roll just the 4 that's required in order to get it off. So say you threw 2 dice and one's a 4, one's a 1. Well, you can throw that second dice and you've already successfully cast it, but now you're trying to re-roll it to see if you get a 6 to make it harder to resist by, an enemy hero or an enemy troop that has resistance to magic, anything like that. And then, of course, being able to re-roll your own resist means that if you re-roll and get a natural 6, you can be saving your own points of will as well. So some good tactics you can use and strategy you can use for Saruman. And then the last thing, we'll just cover his magical powers real quick. He has Immobilize, Terrifying Aura, Command, Sorcerer's Blast, and Flame Burst. And with Immobilize being really good at that anything but a 1 roll, his Staff of Power is still extremely useful even once he's out of will, because that's where you can just 1 dice and immobilize and potentially really ruin your opponent's day for what they could be trying to set up. I do want to talk about Flame Burst for a second. I can't remember exactly what it does off the top of my head. I know it's a really hard hit on a strength value. I want to say it's like strength 7 or strength 8. And then it sets your opponent ablaze, which is crazy because then it's like a reoccurring strength 5 or something like that. You don't really see this used a lot, which is kind of sad in my opinion. I think maybe because of the fact that Sorcerer's Blast is just so much, I wouldn't say better, but it's more, what's the word? It's got a larger, it opens up more options. There's a lot more you can do with it. Even if you're just blasting troops, the ability to maybe knock down a couple guys on a flank or throw a couple mounted troops against each other to take them off their horses, throw a regular troop or a mounted troop against a hero and take them off. It's a ridiculous amount of possibilities you unlock and have with that, and it's easier to get off too. So I'm thinking that's why we don't see Flame Burst really all that much, which is sad because it's a really strong spell. A bit harder to cast than only a 33% success rate, but one that can do some really good damage, especially to a multi-wound hero or a multi-wound model, or even if you just fail and have really bad dice rolls like I do and can't kill whatever it is with the strength 7 or strength 8 hit that the Flame Burst does, but it sets them ablaze. And that's something where, like, if you target a mounted model, it sets the mount ablaze too, so the mount will take the hit, and it will continue to take the hit. Something that can be really good for Lords of Battle. Moving on, we're going to talk about Grima Wormtongue now. So Grima Wormtongue is pretty pathetic when it comes to stats, but, I mean, most of you guys watching this are pretty familiar with the game and with the movies, so it's no surprise that he is pretty pathetic. So he's Fight 2, Strength 3, Defense 3, 1 attack, 1 wound, Courage 2. Extremely frightful. Which is to be expected because it is Grima Wormtongue. He has no might, no will, no fate. Surprise. He can only be included in a force if Saruman is also included. He does have a dagger, and he can be upgraded with a horse. So he's not unarmed, which is good. So he has 2 special rules, and they are pretty big. So the first one is a traitor within. Grima must be deployed in Saruman's warband if deployed as part of the Isengard force. Alternatively, before deployment begins, you may attach Grima to an enemy warband. When this warband is deployed and moves onto the battlefield, you must immediately place Grima afterwards as if he was a member of that warband. Grima is always controlled by his controlling player and moves and fights when it is his controlling player's turn to do so as usual. Now that seems kind of like weird, but I mean he is a traitor within, which makes sense. And there is a reason for that when you get to his second special rules. But let's finish with this one. If deployed as part of the enemy's army, but not as part of his own army, no enemy model can shoot at or strike blows against Grima. Nor can they shoot if Grima is in the way of the shot. Enemy models are allowed to charge Grima and can fight but strike no blows if they win. Note that Grima can be targeted by magical powers. After all, it is Gandalf who roots out his wicked ways. So you can't shoot at him, you can't shoot through him, and even if you go in base contact, well, North is in the way of, yeah, okay, so yeah, they can't shoot, they can't shoot, they could shoot through him if they're in base contact, I'm assuming, because it says it's in the way of the shot, and if you're in base contact, it doesn't count as being in the way, but yeah, magical powers are a good way to get him out of the way, and you'll actually see some people do that. So, the last little bit, the restriction ends if Saruman is slain. If Grima voluntarily charges an enemy model, or if Grima scores a wound with his dagger, even if the wound is avoided with fate, his dagger, because that's his only war gear, Grima can decide not to strike blows if he wins a duel roll in order not to reveal his real allegiance. Once one of these conditions is met, the depth of Grima's evil is revealed, and he becomes an enemy model who can be shot at and fought in the same way as any other enemy model. So yeah, can't be struck against. He can reveal himself, like I said, and then if Saruman is killed, then he becomes an enemy model again. You don't really ever see anybody revealing him, and this is why. So his second rule being Wormtongue, if an enemy hero model is within 6 inches of Grima, 2 might points must be expended to use heroic actions instead of 1. So this is actually a little bit nerfed. It used to be 2 points of might must be expended for everything in the old edition. Now it's only for heroic actions, which is still, pretty devastating. It makes that idea where like a 2 might hero who you use to call a march, or you burn his might for movements as opposed to like an Aragorn's. It makes it so that instead of having 2 opportunities to do that, you're now reduced to 1. So not bad at all for, a few points. Hardest thing, like I said, is he can be charged, but he can't be struck. And that's a tactic that you'll see a lot of people do. Unfortunately, is just charge him and keep recharging him with a model every turn from there on out. So it defeats his purpose a little bit. However, it does tie up an enemy model, which could potentially be useful. So how you use Grima, you have to be kind of careful with him. That 6-inch bubble, though, is pretty big. Even on a board, if it's a 12-inch deployment, it could be possible to never see Grima do anything because he could just be tied up all game at the back. If it's like a 24-inch deployment, then it's very possible to see Grima do something, even if he is, deployed with an enemy. Because, if they get stuck deploying on the front half, like Lords of Battle, where you have to roll, I believe it's Lords of Battle, and 1, 2, 3, you're stuck on the front 12, and 4, 5, 6, it's 24-inch deployment. That could potentially really hurt you, for your enemy anyway. So yeah, Grima's a nice little piece. I think he usually gets shoehorned in with Saruman in pretty much any army that takes Saruman. So we're already at about 15 minutes, so I'm going to cover this last hero, and then we're going to call this a video for now. Because I don't want these going to be like 20, 30-minute videos. I'm trying to see if I can get some shorter ones. Anyway, moving on. So, Lertz is your next hero. Oh, I'm sorry. Grima is independent. Just want to make sure folks knew that. So, Lertz is the next hero. He has Uruk-Hai Isengard infantry hero keyword. Um, I didn't cover Grima, but Grima is the same thing except instead of Uruk-Hai, it's man. Lurtz is a hero of valor. He is fight 5 with a 3-up shoot value. Strength 5, defense 6, 3 attack, 3 wound, courage 5. He has 3 might, 1 will, 1 fate. So he's kind of your go in there and do a lot of fighting. Unfortunately, it kind of sucks that he's only got 1 fate. But that's pretty standard for evil orc and just evil models in general. There's only a few models that actually have more than 1 fate point. The Witch King, you can pay for more. Budget Ring Wraiths, you can pay for more. And like the new Dragon Emperor comes to mind with more than 1 fate. And I think the Golden King, Farad or a Bracken, whatever his name is, the Golden King, he has 2 fate as well, I believe. So there's very few enemies that have enemy heroes that have more than 1 fate. So Lurtz's war gear includes armor, sword, and Uruk-Hai bow. He has the heroic action. His heroic actions include march, strike, strength, and challenge. So it's cool to have him having march, which makes sense because he was a scout Uruk-Hai, you know. So it's no surprise that he's kind of like, come on, let's go. We gotta run. And then him being a hero of valor having challenge is pretty cool because he can go up against what do you call them? Heroes of legend and tie them up. Of course, I don't really see heroic challenge being done much, and I don't really think I would want to do a heroic challenge with Lurtz. Nothing against Lurtz, but most of the heroes of legends out there are pretty damn beefy. I mean, we're talking things like King Elisar. We're talking things like Thranduil and Dane Ironfoot. And, oh, hey, Saruman is a hero of a legend. Imagine that. And while Saruman, he'd have a pretty good shot, I think, taking Saruman on. The fact that he's only got 1 will means that Saruman's most likely going to survive turn 1 combat with Lurtz, you know, with 3 fate and 3 wounds. And even if he doesn't win priority, like the second turn, he's going to win priority in at least 2 of the first 4 turns, hopefully, you know, at a 50-50 rate of winning priorities, or so to speak. And after Lurtz burns his first point of will, his 1 point of will to defend against the spell, the game is going to go to, that fight would go to Saruman every single time, pretty much, I think. I think Lurtz, it's probably closer than that. It's probably like 50-50. I see it could potentially being 50-50. Of course, that being said, you know, points-wise, Saruman is much higher than Lurtz. So Lurtz would definitely be playing up. So, but I digress. He does have heroic challenge. So his options for war gear is a shield, and it's free. And this is something that a lot of people argue about because they're like, no, he gets a free shield. That means he's defense 7. No, the shield is simply there for him to be able to shield. He can't get the defense bonus because he has a bow. He's not an expert. You know, it's not like Riders of Rohan where expert rider, they keep the shield while they're mounted and get the defense bonus. But as soon as they go on foot, they lose the defense bonus, but can continue to use the shield for shielding purposes. It's the same thing with Lurtz. So you have the option to take the shield. It doesn't cost you anything, and the only thing that it gives you is the ability to shield, which I think you should always take. I don't see any reason why not to take it, because if you're not playing Saruman as your leader, there's a good chance if you're playing Isengard, and we're not going to talk about Legendary Legions here, we're just talking about straight Isengard, Lurtz is going to be your leader because he's the second highest tier. Everybody else after this is a hero of fortitude or lower in the case of Grima Wormtongue and like a shaman. So A shaman's a minor, but that's neither here nor there. So I don't see why you would never not take the shield, because even if you get into a sticky situation, he can shield, and then he's got 6 attacks to potentially win a fight. You've got 3 points of might to strike up, so it could potentially save you from having your leader, trapped and only having 3 dice to win a fight. So that hopefully clears up a little bit of that confusion and tells you why you should always take the shield. His special rule is find the halflings, and that is any warband led by Lurtz does not have to roll to determine when and where it arrives in scenarios that require such a roll. Instead, Lurtz may choose the result. So that would be reconnoiter, because you do have to roll to see if you come on. So it says it doesn't have to roll to determine when or where, so he can just come on whenever. That would be hold ground. Command the battlefield, and heirlooms of ages past. So there's only like 4 scenarios that it's applicable to, but that's 4 out of 16. Is that how many scenarios we have now? Or 4 out of 18. So a little less than 25%, but not bad to have. So there is that. And that covers Lurtz. So that covers their first 3 heroes for Isengard, guys. And we're like 21 and a half minutes. So yeah, you can see this is going to be a video series that's going to take a little while. And I'm okay with that, because I want to cover these guys and cover them in depth and talk about them. So thanks for watching. Look forward to doing the next one and hopefully get some feedback from you guys about it. I have a couple armies planned, and I'm looking forward to continuing doing these. The editing is going to be the worst part, so forgive me if sometimes the speech does not match up with the photos. But until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and enjoy your Middle-earth hobby.